8. Boom. Wednesday to Thursday, May 7th to 8th, 1986. Mount St. Helens. Pink sunrise capped with gray clouds gave way to a clearing morning. The exhausted group finally pulled into the ranger station some distance from the volcano the next day. Brian and Diane decided to drive straight through Utah, Idaho, and southern Washington state with only brief rest breaks. Diane shook her fatigue off and went inside the Mount St. Helens Memorial Park Visitor Center to request a hiking permit. A short time later, she emerged carrying paperwork. Diane approached Brian's blue car and bent down to speak through his open window. "They aren't letting people near the mountain itself," she told them. "Mostly geologists, park rangers, and the logging company that's replanting trees in the damaged areas." Brian nodded. "Did you get what we need?" "Yeah, partly. Thanks to my credentials and records as a patrol officer and park ranger in Tennessee, I told them I'm here to research volcanic activity to make a plan for geological activity preparedness back east." She laughed. "They didn't ask many questions, other than verifying my employment with the Park Service." "That's a great idea, Diane," Kenneth said. He was out of the car and stretching in ways that made Brian wince. "You should make a plan, and that way you didn't even lie." "I'll do that," she replied with a smile. "So, where do we go?" Brian asked. "I've made a map of the hiking areas. We've got to backtrack a little bit to a campground to satisfy their permit requirements. Pacific Core, a logging company, operates the nearest one. It's open from 6 in the morning to 9 in the evening. You can follow me there. Pretty sure I can find it," Diane told him. Diane waved the maps under Brian's nose. "When we come back, we'll have to enter the volcano's trail system from the less damaged area to the south. We can park at the trailhead and hike. They're saying that the ash is deeper and unstable to the north side. Workers cleared the south road so it's passable. There's a trail to the summit. It's practically a straight shot up the mountain." "Then we're good to go?" Kenneth said from behind Diane. "I think we better set up camp and rest today. We can make the trek tomorrow."
"I was thinking the same thing," Brian remarked. "Very likely it's going to be a tough walk, and we have an injured party with us. She needs to rest someplace besides the car."
"We all do," Diane noted. "We can start early in the morning."
"Okay, then. I'm ready when you are," Brian said.
Diane led the way slowly while Kenneth consulted the map. They saw elk, birds, and the occasional small ground creatures as they drove. The human observers marveled at the lack of obvious devastation on the mountain's south side. Ahead of them, Diane slowed for a giant moose. It stepped out of the thick pine, cedar, and fir trees lining the road and wandered across the road in front of them. Its antlers were as wide as the road. Mary Lou's eyes grew big. "Wow, that thing is huge. I've never seen one in real life."
"They'll mess up a car real quick," Brian told her. "Worse than the white-tailed deer back home. I've heard tales of moose attacking tractor-trailer rigs with their antlers and totaling them."
"Yikes. I can believe it with the size of that one being about as tall as those young trees," she said. "It's not acting aggressively, though."
"We'll steer clear of him. It'll be okay as long as we don't honk at him or get right up on his tail."
Brian kept a cautious eye out for more animals after easing past the bull moose. They continued until a sign directed them to a clearing among the stately old-growth trees. They pulled into the Beaver Bay Recreation Area and then parked after they found a good camping place. Brian and Diane carefully looked around the campsite for a place to set up tents. Mary Lou followed slowly. She watched them let the coyote and the professor out of the car. The others talked in low tones while she wandered off a short distance by herself. She moved her shoulder gingerly and looked for a shady spot that would keep the sun off her tent during the heat of the day. Kenneth followed with her tent and bedroll. "I thought you might want these." He grinned at her. "I also thought you might need some help." "Ah, thanks."
Yeah, my dome tent can be trickery and stubborn on a good day. Today my arm hurts. What about you? What are you sleeping in? Mary Lou looked at the single pack he carried. I'll be fine with a tarp, rope, and a bag, Kenneth told her. Mary Lou wrinkled her nose at him. Aren't you worried snakes and spiders might crawl in with you? The more, the merrier. He laughed at her skeptical tone. It's called camping. Mary Lou decided not to argue. Help would be needed setting up. I prefer my tent. Briefly, she considered inviting him to join her in a better shelter, but he was already running rope next to the spot she'd chosen. Okay, well, when you get your tent ready to put the poles in, let me know. Kenneth busied himself with his campsite. In the end, the coyote joined Kenneth in his makeshift shelter, with Brian to the other side in a low-profile tent. Diane set up a slightly larger cabin tent next to Mary Lou. The professor indicated he was content to bunk with Diane on a pile of soft blankets next to her cot. It didn't take long for Mary Lou to hear snoring sounds coming from nearby. The chirping of birds and the ability to stretch out on her bedroll soon lulled her to sleep. By late afternoon, everyone started to stir. Diane was building a campfire when Kenneth joined her. Did any snakes come to say hello? Diane asked him, amused. No, but I do have a spider moving in and making herself at home, he said with a slight smile. When Mary Lou joined them, they were both drinking coffee. She declined when Diane produced a third cup and offered it to her. No thanks. She huddled next to the fire with a blanket wrapped around her and shivered slightly. The peace of their surroundings seemed to seep into her awareness. It was an odd contrast to the previous days. It's awfully quiet, isn't it? Mary Lou said. She pulled her knees to her chin, and her eyes were half shut. Oh, my God, shut up! Kenneth exclaimed, making her jump. It's almost like you're trying to bring the sky down on us. Oh, wait, you already did that. She wasn't exactly at fault for that, Diane observed. She was delirious and in pain. Maybe so, but why jinx it? It's a beautiful day. Let's let it go with that, Kenneth replied with a good-natured sideways glare. I didn't mean... Mary Lou's reply was interrupted by noise from Brian's campsite. Are you okay over there? Diane called out to Brian. Yep, just getting a visit from Ken's spiders. I've got Granddaddy Longlegs all over the outside of my tent, he called back and stuck his head out of his tent door. I was smacking 'em off. Hey, Ken, I need to visit the men's room. You want to head over with me? Yeah, a buddy system. Nobody is going anywhere alone till we do the deed like we agreed. He nodded toward the cars and was deliberately vague. It's too dangerous, Kenneth replied. Anybody else? Brian bounced on his toes. I'm good, Diane said. I'll stay here with Diane. I went earlier, Mary Lou replied. At least we're in a good mood. You can cheer Ken up. I'm not in a bad mood, Kenneth told her as he set his cup down and stood up. I just don't want you hurt again. He patted her on the head as he passed and headed off with Brian. Surprised, she closed her mouth on any reply. Mary Lou went to her tent to hide the sudden emotional reaction that she didn't fully understand. Her eyes lit on her cooler. Food would be good, she said to herself. Clumps of ice made rummaging for hot dogs and cheese in the cooler a challenge. Going back and forth to the fire pit, she fetched skewers for cooking. When the guys returned, Mary Lou and Diane were cooking a meal for the group. The professor, resigned to wolf form until they were rid of the spear on the morrow, snuggled close to Diane and tried to look as dog-like as possible while he waited for food. Their coyote companion stared Mary Lou down till she pulled a steaming piece of meat off her skewer and fed it to him. You're getting spoiled, my friend, Mary Lou giggled. Totally taken advantage. Yep, the coyote told her and stamped his feet. The eager look on his face made the teen giggle again. Fine, you can have another one, sir, but I get to eat the next one after that, she admonished.
After she had eaten her fill, Mary Lou found herself pacing around their campsite. Unable to sit still, she moved her shoulders and found that the soreness was gradually going away. Brian noticed her looking at the marks on her skin. He went to where she was standing beside a sign that designated a trailhead. "Don't worry, I'm not wandering off by myself," she told him before he could ask. "I was just curious how far it is from here to where we're going, and how steep a climb it is. This sign doesn't seem to give that information." "This isn't the right trail, but I didn't think you were going to hike alone. You were looking restless, and I thought I'd come check on you. How's the shoulder?" "Healing a lot faster than I would have thought," she told him. "See? Even the red marks are fading out and the skin is closed." "Whatever that thing was that you encountered, it did a doozy on you," Brian said. He examined the wound and nodded in satisfaction. "But it's looking a lot better now. For a few minutes, I thought we were going to lose you." Ken was practically beside himself. He gave her a piercing look. "Is there something you'd like to tell me?" He grinned mischievously. Puzzled, Mary Lou shook her head. "No, there's nothing to tell." "Huh. Okay," Brian said with a wink. "But you two would make a cute couple." "As if." She rolled her eyes and shrugged. She thought back to the prom night disaster the year before. "He doesn't even like me much. No guys ever do." "You might be surprised," Brian told her seriously. "Maybe you just don't give them a chance. You give all the wrong signals. Hell, I'd date you. You're cute, smart, and totally sexy when you're mad." Her eyes were wide as she stared at him. "Excuse me? Cute? Huh. See? Just like that." He laughed at her, retreating back. "At least now you aren't feeling sorry for yourself," he muttered when she couldn't hear him. "And you'll never give me a chance, girl. You're smitten with him and won't admit it. Everybody sees it but you two." Brian shook his head and followed her. When he reached the others, Mary Lou had plopped herself, predictably, right beside Kenneth. She glared at Brian, but he grinned back at her unmoved. Diane and Kenneth remained unaware of the emotional subtext going on beside them. Their attention had turned to making plans for the hike to the still intact portion of Mount St. Helens Peak. "It'll be rough going," Diane was saying. She held up the map so Kenneth and Brian could see. "We start here." She tapped the map. "Then we'll end up here. This is where we are at right now." Her brown finger moved across the lines on the map. "Off of 81 and south right now. I see it." Kenneth was on his knees. He stared intently at the markings and placed his own finger on the map. "According to this, we need to head northeast. We go back past the ranger outpost there, and that should be the start of our trek. We enter the trail way before this path that looks like it goes around the mountain," Kenneth said. "They call that Lowit Trail, and, yeah, it goes all the way around," Diane agreed. "The trail existed before the big eruption 6 years ago. Parts of it are still largely obliterated, but we'll only see that in passing because our goal is to go up the slope." "Did they give some idea of what to expect?" Mary Lou interrupted. "Yeah, they did." Diane nodded. "There's basically 3 legs of the trail, and it's not well marked. The bottom part's old-growth forest. That's a relatively easy walk. The second part is a boulder field, and the top is fine ash, almost like sandy dunes on the slopes. There's going to be a lot of slipping and sliding. We'll be stirring up ash everywhere we step." "How far is it?" Brian asked. "A little over 9 miles from the access point, which is a bit more distant than a logging road that dead ends there," Diane answered him. "It probably depends on how many detours we end up taking. I figure if we leave the campground right after the gates open, and if we start walking around 7 in the morning,
We can probably be up there at the top around noon or 1 o'clock. Kenneth sat back on his heels. Piece of cake, he said as he nodded agreement. Sounds like a plan to me. Mary Lou looked around at her companions. She hesitantly asked a question that was really on her mind. Is it safe? At the top, I mean. Kenneth read her trepidation and the direction of her thoughts. It's a bit late for that, don't you think? I mean, given that we came halfway across the country to make this hike, we are committed. Whatever happens, just happens. We are here for the lava, so... He trailed off, looking Mary Lou squarely in the eyes. That's not all you're worried about, is it? No, not everything, she hesitated. I go hiking with my dad up in the Smoky Mountains a lot. It's steep, but not as steep as this. I usually have a tough time somewhere on the trail with my asthma bothering me. I'm also worried I'll slow us down. Maybe I should... Stay here and camp? He finished her sentence for her. With the dogs, if necessary, she told them, and looked apologetically at the two canines. We'll not be leaving anyone behind, Diane told her firmly. Exactly right, Brian said. Well, the mountain may be dangerous. We already agreed not to leave anybody alone. Bad things tend to happen when we do. Kenneth looked sympathetic, but didn't back down. Agreed, he said. We will go at whatever pace we need to. You are physically fit enough that you should be able to make it. I've seen your determination when you make up your mind, and you're going to do something. He laughed a little. She smiled at him. Very true. But seriously, don't fail to let us know if you get into trouble. You tend to try to hide it, and we can't afford for you to do that out here. You have to be able to get down the mountain under your own steam after you climb. Okay? Kenneth asked her. Yes, she told him. Diane broke back into the conversation. Pace yourself and don't push past what you can do, though. Heroics are one thing, but the back country won't forgive mistakes, she said. You'll go with us in the morning. I'll watch her, Brian spoke up. If it comes to that, Diane, you and Ken can go on ahead. I'll stay with her if she falls behind. There's an inhaler in my med kit. It's a new thing they've come out with for asthma. She can carry that with her if it gets bad. Mary Lou looked around at all of them gratefully. Thank you. No problem, Brian told her. May 8th, 1986. Here and there, new-growth trees or flowers dotted the ruined landscape and filled the ditches where erosion had exposed the soil enough for new life to sprout among the ash. An overlay of gray dulled everything near Mount St. Helens, a sobering reminder that the mountain ahead was not as calm as it seemed. They skirted most of the worst of the damage left by the 1980 eruption, parked, and headed into the green forest with their gear. Kenneth led the way carrying the Spear of Chaos. Diane went second with the professor and the coyote ranging to either side of Diane with Mary Lou behind her. This area has made a lot of progress toward recovery in 6 years, Mary Lou remarked to Brian after they'd walked for a while. It's beautiful. I didn't expect to find so much life here. This mountain didn't kill everything nearly the way I thought it did from seeing it on television. You're right, Brian agreed. In 50 years, you may not know it ever erupted. That's assuming it doesn't blow its top again before that. Let's not dwell on that part since we're walking up the side of it today. Mary Lou laughed a little, but she eyed the mountain looming ahead of them. Rather than comment further, she concentrated on walking. Brian, designated to bring up the rear, dropped back and left her with her thoughts. She could hear the jingle of his carabiners which dangled from a length of coiled rope he carried. She remembered what he said when he pulled them out at home. Repellent gear for added safety in case we need it up top, or somebody slips in a difficult place, Brian had told her when he packed for the hike. I've seen the drone and aircraft footage. We also might need it to get into the crater. All of us? Mary Lou had asked in dismay. I don't know how to rappel.
He grinned at her response. No, likely just Ken. But I want the option to pull him out this time and not leave him stuck like he was in the river at the dam. He has a harness in his pack. Nice. You guys are way ahead of the plan. I didn't think about that, she'd said. With her mind back in the present, Mary Lou examined the scenery. The first couple of miles were eaten away by their steady progress. As they moved along the footpath, the trees grew sparser. They were also smaller the higher they went. Songbirds flitted among the branches, and a chipmunk looked for seeds among the rocks. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. Pebbles crunched under her feet. Loose volcanic ash was everywhere. At the end of the tree line, boulders and large pumice rocks marred the side of the mountain. Climbing became more difficult. They called a halt to rest before tackling the minefield of stones above them. Diane shared a drink with the two canines and left the professor sniffing a tall stand of weeds to check on Mary Lou. She plopped bonelessly on a rock next to the girl where she could get a view of the horizon peeking through the treetops. The view will only get better from here, Diane remarked. She noted that the teen was breathing heavily, but was still calm. I can hardly wait to see it, Mary Lou agreed. Except for the mountains. It all looks so flat and blue, almost like a big land ocean. When you make it to the top of this mighty hill, you'll be above the level of the clouds and looking down on 'em. Diane smiled. Mary Lou eyed the trail ahead dubiously. Hopefully, I'll make it, she said. You will, don't worry, a deeper voice said from behind them. Brian joined them on their rock. You've made it this far, and even though it's been slow going, you're still with us. He rummaged in his pack and handed her a trail mix bar. For energy, he told her. But remember to use the inhaler I gave you when your chest starts feeling tight. Thanks, Mary Lou said gratefully and accepted the snack. Looks like the next stretch has a lot of loose rock, Diane observed. We're all going to have to pace ourselves, not just you. Whatever else Diane was about to say was lost in the noise from above them near the trail. What's that? Kenneth exclaimed near where the noise arose. What on earth is he doing? Diane asked when she joined him. John's going crazy. Oh, wow. Is Medicine Bear eating that bush or trying to mate with it? I can't tell. Mary Lou's eyes were wide. He looks like a cat who has found the best catnip ever. As they watched, the normally sedate and dignified college professor wallowed aggressively and chewed on the tall plants he'd found earlier. Since he looked like a wolf, it just made the situation seem more surreal. Brian, you come out here every summer during wildfire season. Got any idea what the herb is that he's going crazy over? Diane asked. It looks like fireweed, but the flower color and size is way off, Brian told her. It has a sweet smell usually, and the flowers taste like honey. When it dries up, it burns like crazy, although some people make herb sachets out of it to make their clothes smell good. Given the way he's acting, I'd say it's pretty tasty. Diane waved at her mentor and his unfortunate circumstance. The professor as wolf was clawing at a tree now and growling and rolling all over it. As they watched, he left a huge gash in the bark of a fir tree. When he finally looked at the group, the wolf's eyes were glassy. The spear, awakened from its self-imposed quiet during the commotion, pushed at the professor but found its way blocked. Puzzled, it withdrew into itself and tried again to slide into the mind of the wolf. It found the emotions and psyche of the spirit wolf and the human mind guarded by it, but were both beyond its reach. Angry, it turned on Kenneth, who had laid the spear beside it himself to get a drink and a snack. Blood, it whispered to him. Hungry. Kill the beast and eat. Unnatural. Kenneth found himself on his feet with the spear in his hand before he caught himself and threw the spear down. He addressed the coyote, who watched the professor with ears pricked nearly to touching. God, this bloody stick, Kenneth told to him. It's up to its old tricks. It don't control me. I do.
What are you gonna do? Brian asked him.
End this.
Kenneth clenched his jaw.
He felt an overpowering urge to kill the wolf with his bare teeth, but he was aware of the spear's influence. The coyote stood over the spear, growling with hackles raised as the artifact attempted to manipulate him into attacking as well. He snarled louder, but the avatar of Coyote held his place. Kenneth went to the wolf, but instead of harming him, grabbed him firmly by the ruff and pinned him down. Under the boy's hand, the spirit wolf gained a sense of relief due to a magical effect blocking the spear's influence. Shay's spirit partly relaxed. The professor began to shift back to human flesh and bone, but got stuck partway as a result. Brian couldn't hold back a snarky comment. See? I told you! Werewolf! Mary Lou and Diane simultaneously realized what was happening. The fireweed, Diane said, snapping her fingers. I think so, too. It's caused him to shapeshift back, and the spear isn't stopping it, Mary Lou said. This is great. We just found something that works. Something needs to, Kenneth said vehemently, then muttered under his breath. Well, crap. Dude, that ain't a fig leaf. That's a handful of grass. And now we got another problem. Diane shook her head. No, Brian, he's not a werewolf. He's not cursed. He's blessed. Brian looked puzzled. How do you figure that? I wouldn't even consider turning into a wolf a blessing. Because he doesn't desire blood, and he, for the most part, retains his mind. The moon phase has no hold on him. Despite what we see with our eyes or the skinwalker legend, it's protection in his case. The only thing we don't know is whether it's a permanent effect or just temporary, Diane replied. Does anyone have an extra bag? Mary Lou asked, oblivious to the conversation. I'm going to grab all this plant stuff I can carry, she declared. Technically, that's illegal in the park, but given the circumstances, I'm right there with you, Diane agreed. An extra bag? How about some extra clothes? Kenneth raised his hands and waved to get their attention. A naked werewolf problem here, guys. Oh, not me, Mary Lou said. I've just got my light raincoat rolled up in my pack, although it's extra big and might fit if he doesn't mind a big orange UT poncho. Yeah, call attention to the werewolf. That won't get us shot at, Brian commented sarcastically. That's all kinds of wrong, Kenneth agreed, but he laughed despite the awkwardness of the situation. Hey, it wasn't my idea, Mary Lou said sheepishly. My mom's the big UT fan. Mom insisted I take it when I left. I look horrible in bright orange. Don't you worry, you guys. I got it covered, Diane told them. I always bring extra in case it rains and I get wet. I bring 'em extra large to put on over my outer layer. I'm pretty sure they'll fit. At least long enough to get this done and get out of here. With the jumbled boulder field was comfortably exposed and strenuous to the climbers, the view became increasingly impressive the higher they went. Vegetation didn't grow this far up the slope of the volcano. Nothing blocked their view of the surrounding blue field of hilltops. Sharp, snow-covered peaks punctuated the scene in a flat panorama as distant as the eye could see. Sightseeing gave the teens an excuse for frequent stops to let Mary Lou catch her breath without seeming to slow the group too much. However, she became daunted by the footing about a mile from the top. The terrain changed from pumice boulders of all sizes to fine ash and coarse pebbles that shifted underfoot and weighed them down like trying to walk on dry sand. It made upward progress far more difficult. Slipping and fighting not to glide backward downslope, They finally reached the summit of Mount St. Helens in the early mid-afternoon and stopped. "This is absolutely breathtaking up here," Brian said enthusiastically, hopping up and down when he finally reached the rim of the volcano. "We're standing on one of the three sisters, and you can see the other two. Wow! Look, over there's Mount Rainier, and there's Mount Hood in the distance." "Yeah, it's pretty," Mary Lou barely managed to say, breathing hard and bent over. Her legs were shaking badly enough that she found herself wondering how Brian could still be so bouncy. It almost annoyed her, but she was too busy trying to get enough air to glare at him. Kenneth watched Mary Lou, concerned, but didn't say anything. Instead, he considered how best to approach the problem of finally getting rid of the spear. He crouched down with his head in his hand to consider the terrain. His warm amber-brown eyes took in every detail. A heavy sigh came from Diane. "I don't see any help for it. Somebody's got to go in. It's too far to throw it from here." Diane also looked at the interior of the volcano, considering the options. "Now that we're here and can actually see it, I'd say what the aerial footage seemed to show was pretty accurate." "Obviously," Kenneth said. "There's no other way to reach a lava shaft." "What are you gonna do?" Diane asked. "Get rid of this thing for good this time," Kenneth said firmly. "It worked for Frodo with the ring. Why not with the artifact of the undead asshole?" "I know that. What I mean is how you getting close enough to be effective. There's a lava dome building up in there, probably where a central vent lies underneath. It's gonna be hot." Diane raised an eyebrow. "This isn't a ring. It's sure enough better work," she finished with a mutter. Her stress was bringing out her southern black girl accent. Diane couldn't help feeling uneasy and gave the spear a stern look. "I'll go down there and just do it. Get close, put the thing in, and the mountain will take care of melting it down. Simple, and we can all go home in peace," Kenneth told her, squinting up at her into the sun. "At least that's the plan." Brian stopped a short distance away and pointed. "There and there. I see possible tie-off points for the ropes depending on how hot it might be. That will be close to the opposite end of the caldera from where we're standing." "Okay, I see," Diane trailed off. "That rock looks big enough to hold the weight of two people on the ropes if we need to double up." "We'll hope we don't have to," Brian said. He was all business as quickly and efficiently tied the ropes off. Then he helped Kenneth get his harness settled. "All right, let's do this thing," Kenneth said. When he turned around with his back to the volcano's interior, he grabbed the rope firmly, and his eyes met Mary Lou's. She caught her breath when she saw the worried expression in his eyes. It didn't match the surety in his voice. "Go back," he told her firmly. "Start now and don't look back. Don't come for me." His voice changed to a deeper, serious timbre. "You don't need to be up here for this." "I'm not leaving you, and I just got here," she told him softly. Why does it seem like we've been here, had this conversation before? Mary Lou wondered. A profound sense of familiarity made the situation seem surreal. "I don't understand." Kenneth took a deep breath and blew it out slowly. Brian started to interject, but swallowed what he was about to say. Diane realized something was passing between the two teens on a deeper level and stayed silent. "It's simple. You don't need to be up here," Kenneth tried to reason with her. "There's nothing you can do, and if something happens, you'll have a head start." "But—" She opened her mouth to speak, but he cut her off. "Just go," Kenneth demanded. "No, I don't want to," Mary Lou insisted. "Oh, my God, girl, why not?" Kenneth gave an exasperated sigh. Because I'm afraid you won't come back. Because I'm more scared of that than anything, and I don't know why. Mary Lou shook her head. You might need me, she settled for saying, embarrassed that she couldn't articulate the real problem and didn't think he wanted to hear it. I'm pretty sure I can take care of this myself, he told her. You and Diane head back. Brian and I will finish up here and join you back at home camp. But, she objected. Now! Kenneth practically yelled at Mary Lou. If you don't, I'll knock you out and have Brian carry you back down the mountain. How would you like that? That's a bit extreme there, bud, but okay. Brian eyed Mary Lou. You ready? I can walk, she objected. Then off you go. Kenneth gestured to their back trail. I got shit to do. The girl followed Diane back the way they'd come with a defeated sigh. Going down was much faster than going up, they found. Loose ash and pebbles moved and shifted under their feet, causing them to slide in places. The two canines slid most of the way on their bellies. Professor Holderman looked like he was sledding, sending drifts of ash into the air. They waited for the slower members of their party when the ground solidified into the boulder field. I have a bad feeling we better pick up the pace, Diane said. We ain't got time to be pretty about it. Watch a fallen rock and don't stop. The four of them moved as quickly as they could. The professor and the coyote led the way. A growing sense that the mountain could fall on them any second made their progress more urgent. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all, Diane said as she climbed over more rocks. Though it's maybe a little late for buyer's remorse. Yeah, was all Mary Lou said, short of breath and struggling not to show it. She looked over her shoulder at the top of the mountain with a worried expression. Come on, guys, get out of there. She tried to will them to appear, but saw no sign of anyone else coming down behind them. She caught her breath when she saw smoke and ash begin to billow in a sky-high plume above them. No, she whispered, horrified. Diane noticed too. Uh-oh, she exclaimed. Go, go! We've got all the head start we're gonna get, she urged. They felt the rumble beneath their feet before they heard the faint sound from further up the mountain. Move! Diane yelled. They ran for their lives. At the top of the mountain, Kenneth and Brian struggled as the caldera's interior broke loose and started to collapse under Kenneth's feet. It started slowly, but gradually increased its momentum. As cracks appeared, large chunks of ash shifted. Kenneth relied on the rope to keep from being swept into the hot sludge. It was turning into a mud flow at the lava vent where he had just plunged the spear of chaos. Steam and smoke boiled out of the vent. Die, bitch! Kenneth gritted his teeth and grinned savagely, showing fangs. Good riddance! He coughed as the smoke and sulfur clouds thickened around him. The toxic gases emanating from the hole began to make him dizzy. In response, Kenneth took a hand-over-hand approach to pull himself up the rope. Brian also hauled on the rope from where he stood on the volcano's rim. Not so fast, warrior, a heavily accented female voice said calmly. What makes you think you can mess with my volcano without permission and get off so easy? Kenneth jumped, startled. He looked around and tried to peer through the smoke to find out who was talking to him. Who's there? I am Pele, the rightful guardian of this mountain. A tall, willowy figure in a red and orange flowing dress appeared through the smoke. Where she walked over the flowing sludge, it cooled and hardened. Her golden-brown hair flowed in the breeze under a wreath of pink flowers. Another myth walking around, Kenneth said, nonplussed. Why should I be surprised at this point? Do I look like a myth? Pele smiled.
Now, quit changing the subject, warrior. You are here causing trouble, and if I don't mitigate the damage, people will die today. Therefore, I require your help. My help? I am helping by melting down that thrice accursed spear Loki's spawn made. Noble intent, perhaps. Poor execution, Pele replied at the mention of Loki. You must find another way. She held her hand out toward the vent. It puffed and then popped violently as a gas bubble escaped, carrying the spear with it far into the air, only to disappear from sight in the roiling smoke and ash. Stronger lava flows followed that carried melted snow and ash sludge along with them. What did you just do? Kenneth demanded, alarmed. The mountain was not scheduled to erupt today. I am charged by our Heavenly Father with dominion over the lake of fire. A tool of chaos in my volcanoes renders them unpredictable and dangerous. It is not time for them to all go off at once. I must insist you not do this. Pele was still smiling. You crazy, Kenneth declared. Or am I? Talking to a spirit. He was still slowly being dragged upward, but he resumed pulling himself up by hand. There are innocents out and about, warrior. Because of your actions, they have no advance information provided by the instruments on these slopes. You must give them warning of what you have seen here. Kenneth thought about that for a moment. What about the people that died 6 years ago? He said, then stopped as the gravity of the situation brought another question. How bad is it? He asked. I am shifting things beneath the mountain to hold back the worst of the pressure to avoid a full eruption. Though I do love a good boom, Pele purred. You will be lucky for it only to be a small lava flow, but there will be some unavoidable heat buildup in Dish. Yeah, I've noticed. Kenneth looked down at himself. Sweat stuck his clothes to his skin. His face was wet and dripping from the heat. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to leave. I can't call anybody standing around up here, he said. Pele watched calmly as the teen made it to the vertical part of his climb. The rope, which was also suffering the effects of the heat, frayed and broke under his weight. She reached out and caught him by the wrist in a vice grip before he could fall into the flowing lava below them. 6 years ago, they had plenty of warnings and chose of their own free will to ignore them. Today, without warning, further death are up on you. Now, up you get. She tossed him easily to within a couple of feet below the rim where Brian had been panicking about losing his friend to the erupting volcano. Oh, hell, Brian said. I don't want to know how you just did that, but grab this and grab my hand. I think it's time to go. I take it you getting rid of the spear is why it's belching all kinds of mess down there? Yeah, well, you see, about that. Kenneth grabbed for the offered assistance and sucked in his breath when Brian grabbed his wrist in the same place where Pele had seized it. Ow, that smarts. What? Oh, crap, Ken, you're burned, Brian exclaimed as he saw his friend's wrist after he'd helped him to his feet. Hey, that looks like a handprint. No time for that, Kenneth snarled through gritted teeth. Let's go. He preferred to avoid potentially lengthy explanations for the time being. Brian and Kenneth quickly slid and clambered their way down into the forest below on the south side slope of the volcano, trying to put distance between themselves and the top of the mountain. They were too busy moving to talk to one another until they were close to the place they'd chosen to meet up with their companions in the forest. Diane had her arms crossed and tapped her toe when the two out-of-breath teens made it back. Her stormy expression as they approached was explained by the presence of the Spear of Chaos, jabbed point first and hilt deep in the ground beside her. Her dark brown eyes stared a hole in the two guys as they breathlessly approached. What in the name of Sam hell is this? Diane shouted at them. I thought this was supposed to be up there.
In the volcano. Not down here trying to go home with us again. What did we come all this way for?
Brian stared at Diane and the Spear of Chaos in confusion.
We did leave it up there, he told her. He just randomly dropped out of the sky while we were waiting for you.
Mary Lou shook her head.
We need an explanation. What happened?
I'm not sure you'd believe me if I told you, Kenneth began.
Try me, mister, Diane demanded. You see, there was this girl, he tried to say.
Uh-huh.
Diane's eyes narrowed. Don't give me no cockamamie bullshit story. I didn't drive no 2,500 miles to get a story about a girl. You got enough girls chasing you all over Kingston. Try again. No, for real, he tried to interject.
What girl? Brian and Mary Lou asked at the same time.
Kenneth drew himself up to his full height and glared back. Maybe if you'd quit interrupting me, I can tell you guys. He huffed irritably. Okay, short version is, I got close enough to real lava I was able to put the spear into an opening. The mountain decided to go boom when I did. Then Pele showed up. She removed the spear and told me to get off her mountain. End of story. The volcano goddess? Mary Lou's eyes were wide. I'm not sure exactly what she is, he answered. She's some kind of spirit because she was walking on the red-hot lava. Not the goddess. Kenneth recognized a lilting voice as the girl in question spoke to them. I am a helper, although men have called me a goddess before. I have dominion anywhere the lake of fire rises to the surface. Pele. Kenneth turned around and nodded to her respectfully. Pele sat serenely on a boulder among the trees. They noticed she was barefoot, an odd contrast to the flowing flame-colored dress she wore. She sat with her arms around her knees with her feet crossed. I do have a question, though. Why did you throw this artifact in my mountain? Pele asked. She rose and approached the group. What made you decide to drive 2,500 miles, as you put it, to come here today? Loki doesn't typically play with fire. There's a book series. It's about an evil magic ring, and the only way to destroy it is to throw it in the volcano where it was forged, Mary Lou explained. We have tried literally everything else, so we thought we'd put it into a volcano with fire hot enough to melt it down. You took the advice of someone else's fantasy, I see. Pele sighed. If it were anything else, it would have been destroyed. But though the fountain of youth also waters it, the very deepest roots of the world tree drink from the lake of fire. Gehenna gives it strength, Pele told them. So what does that have to do with the spear? Kenneth asked. The spear's power comes from the sacred made profane. Its shaft was crafted from the wood of the world tree itself, and then it was forged in blood. I can hear the cries of the souls it has stolen. Then it's all useless. Mary Lou's face fell. What do we do now? Not quite, Pele told them. There is always a way. All that is made can be unmade. I have already pushed my authority farther than I should have this day. It is not my place to tell you what is in the case. The Prime Creator, however, has interest due to the innocence involved. He always watches and knows. He will make sure of a proper conclusion, however long it takes. So we get more cryptic messages and no help? Kenneth glared at her. I went all the way up there, got burned nearly to a crisp, only to have you spit it back out and tell us there's a way, but not what? Diane gave Mary Lou a sideways glance. The other girl's shoulders drooped, and her expression was pained. Girl, when did you become such a Debbie Downer, huh?
You're always the one giving us pep talks lately. We ain't giving up, Diane told her firmly.
Sorry, Diane,
Mary Lou sighed. It's all good. Diane waved her hand dismissively. You been through it all this trip, so it's understandable. We better keep our heads up and looking though, 'cause it ain't over yet.
I am sorry for the burn, Pele said to Kenneth softly. I brought you some fresh aloe from my island as a gift. It will soothe your wrist. If you had fallen, it was the only way I could keep you from the lake of fire. Even immortality could not have saved you then.
Is that why you came back? Kenneth asked as he took the offered plant.
Just so,
Pele said with a smile. Then I thank you, Kenneth said formally and inclined his head to the Lady of Fire. He used the stem of aloe on his burn. It stung at first, but then the pain of the fire lessened. The handprint was already faded when he kept his promise to radio the Park Service about the eruption. When the warnings began to crackle out over the airwaves, they piled in the cars and returned to camp. Pele walked off. By the time the people looked around again, she was no longer visible. She chose to wander quietly for a time through the forest when she happened upon an enormous red cat sitting beside the path. It didn't matter to the cat that Pele was in her spirit form. The cat watched her with its tail flipping slowly. He looked faintly like a lynx or a desert cat with thick tabby stripes and spots, but it was shaped like an Abyssinian, much larger, heavier cousin. Pele stopped to greet the cat.
Hello there.
She bent down and held her hand out, palm up.
It is always a pleasure, Blastumet.
The red cat purred and approached. It bumped Pele's hand. A spark flew between them, but neither of them was fazed. When Pele stood up, the cat wound around her feet, rubbing up against her.
You are guarding them well. I approve, Pele told the cat. I sense great danger, but they have a worthy cause. At least they aren't likely to throw what they carry into a volcano again.
Meow, the red cat agreed.
Okay, then, off you go.
Pele laughed joyfully as the red cat sauntered off and left her alone in the forest. The spirit faded into the shadows at the base of the mountain. The trees and the wildlife were peacefully left to their own devices.